How can a team with a dominant lineup and rock-solid rotation, where in almost every game it seemed like a guaranteed win, slowly turn into a struggling playoff team? Here's what I saw. The 2022 Yankees started out on track to have one of, if not the best single-season records of all time. They were the first team to 50 wins. They were sitting pretty at the All-Star break as the American League favorite. There were so many storylines. Aaron Judge on pace to break the home run record. Clay Holmes being the best arm in the entire bullpen in the entire league. And Nestor Cortez proving himself as a guy in the league, making his first spot on the All-Star team. And with the full minor league system stacked with young players, it almost seemed like the 28th World Championship was coming straight to the door. Early in the season, every starter, they pitched like an ace. They wouldn't give up that many runs. And the few games that they did, they would hold on until the 6th or 7th inning until it was time to call to the bullpen. Today's day and age, it's not that common. You get guys going 4 or 5 innings. So in the first half, when the Yankees were going deep into almost every game, they were easing their bullpen and not using them way too much, saving their arms for the entire season. But once everybody started to slow down, it turned into the Nestor Cortez show. And the pressure, it probably got to him because about after the All-Star break, his numbers started to come down to earth, and he looked like a normal pitcher instead of that top guy that he was looking like. And when they got rid of Jordan Montgomery at the All-Star break, it kind of messed up the starting rotation. They were one of the few teams that had 2 lefties in the rotation. It's not a crazy thing, but when you have that advantage, it kind of sucks to get rid of it. The Harrison Bader piece, it was a good chip later down in the year, but at first it kind of seemed very questionable. Most Yankee fans, we were very surprised by the Montgomery trade. It just popped up out of nowhere in the last day. So that was probably one thing that kept the rotation struggling, was they all had to find their new piece since that guy wasn't there later in the back end. So yeah, in my opinion, one mistake that the Yankees made was getting rid of that lefty piece. Like I said, it's not a huge mistake. They did manage with the other pitchers. A lot of guys and a lot of teams have right-handed rotation dominant. But we were one of the very few teams that had multiple lefties to go to in any inning. We had 2 guys early, and then we had a handful of pitchers in the bullpen. When it comes to the bullpen, you can only speculate on what could have been. And I say that because in the first half, they were the best bullpen in the entire league. Clay Holmes was the best pitcher, and he had a solid group behind him. Clark Schmidt, who else? Wandy Peralta. There was a bunch of other guys, but when the injury bug came around to get Chad Green, Chapman, Loizica, Domingo Herman, Marinaccio even went down for a little bit, they kind of went to a few guys way too much. They heavily went to Clay Holmes, heavily went to Clark Schmidt, and they heavily went to Wandy Peralta. Peralta, he held his own throughout the whole year, even the playoffs. But going to Clay Holmes and Clark Schmidt way too much, it bit them in the ass later in the year, because in the postseason, they kind of struggled. And, in their last spot where they brought in Clark Schmidt in Clay Holmes' position, they probably looked at it like, we use Clay too much, we could give Clark these innings, and then it fucked them. So another big mistake that the Yankees made with pitching rotation was only relying on 3 guys in the bullpen when you have about 10 guys you could go to at any time. They should have added a bigger name in the All-Star break on the bullpen right before the trade deadline. They added Weissert and Efros, and those guys, they did pretty well. But like I said, it wasn't a big name in the league. Probably should have went for Josh Hader. I don't know if he was looking for the Yankees because he has that hair and he probably does want to cut it. But Josh Hader probably would have been the best bullpen piece to grab. It's another lefty. And later we didn't even have Chapman, so our big lefty that everybody thinks about, he wasn't even there. So that's one thing that they missed the ball on, definitely dropped it, needed lefties, and they got rid of one of their lefties, and that was a big mistake. Finally, the thing we all want to talk about is the inconsistent batting lineup and playing position players in the field who shouldn't be there. From the start of the season, conversation around the field was that Aaron Judge needed to have a big season to get the big contract that he was hoping for. IKF was here to hold the spot for the young guys, and Donaldson could still ball. And even Hicks projected that he would have a 30-30 season. The minute those things didn't happen, it should have meant they brought up the young guys to fill in those spots and to get their feet wet. So that later in the year, the conversation is that the young guys aren't ready, or that Aaron Judge is carrying this Yankees team to a playoff spot that they had locked up. If it means playing the two young kids on the left side, making Donaldson your DH and sitting IKF for a week, those things should have been written out and communicated with the entire team, because everybody looked off. You know, in the playoffs, with Aaron Hicks went out, everybody else in the outfield playing Cabrera, they didn't look comfortable. They weren't a unit. They didn't play there much together, so the chemistry wasn't fully built the way that it needed to be. They tried to add help early in the season with the struggling when they brought in Benintendi and Harrison Bader, but they couldn't really find their bats late in the year. They were struggling heavily, and they really fucked up by showing their pieces, telling everybody that they were going to bring the young guys up and give them playing time. But then later they didn't give them any playing time that they really needed. You know, they played Cabrera. Cabrera held his own. He was a blessing to this Yankees team. He was the energy that they needed. Played outfield and infield. He wasn't even an outfielder really in the minors, but he looked like a solid major league outfielder. But when Peraza, they should have had Peraza play for IKF or Donaldson. You know, you could play IKF at third base. He won his Gold Glove there in 2020. And you play Peraza at shortstop. But they really fucked up by not getting those pieces set in stone early. Telling everybody that you were going to use the rookies and the young kids, but didn't go to them. It kind of made every Yankee fan hate the front office midway through the year. And you heard that when all the ceremonies, they would boo the owner and all those people. So they really need to, in this upcoming season, they really need to use the young guys wisely and get together a consistent batting lineup. Use your leadoff hitters as leadoff hitters. Get your guys that move guys over, get on base, so that the big bats in Judge, Stanton, and Rizzo, they can drive in the runs instead of having to hit solo home runs to get onto the board. Going into the offseason, with around $100 million to add onto their annual salary, the Yankees, they brought back Rizzo, 17 for 2 years, $40 million guaranteed. They brought back IKF. I don't know, maybe they'll use him as a trade piece midway through the season, or so they didn't have to get rid of draft picks. Who knows? But they need to re-sign Aaron Judge to whatever contract he wants. Make him the first $40 million player. Give him an 8-year contract. The contract leaked. We're recording this video the week that his contract got leaked to $337 million. So if you put that on 8 years, you know what I mean. It's a pretty good contract. He makes $40 million a year. Probably if they want to add a little bit more. I told my brother earlier in this year, I think his contract will be $42 million. Pay him. Bring back Benintendi. If you don't bring Benintendi, definitely get Yoshida from Japan. He said he wants to go to the Phillies. He posted that picture of the Bryce Harper jersey. You might have to throw him a sweeter deal than the Phillies give him. But I definitely think if you don't bring Benintendi, get Yoshida. He's just like him. He's a good leadoff hitter, but with more power. And if you don't go those two routes, I said bring Jerickson Profar. He's a switch hitting batter. He could play infield the days that the guys need rest in the middle, or he could be our everyday left fielder or right fielder when Judge needs a break. Another thing they need to add is left-handed pitching. Bring up the young guys. They made a move with Matt Crook. They brought him in for the bullpen. They need to use some trade pieces in IKF later in the year. Hicks or Donaldson to offload their contracts to bring in some younger guys. You could probably put a young deal together to the Orioles with their young up-and-coming team. They have a big group of pitchers, so maybe we could trade one of our starters and some of our outfielders, maybe Florial, maybe Peraza, maybe Torres. I don't know what they're thinking, but definitely we could get 2 pitchers from the Orioles. The Mariners sound like they really want Gleyber Torres. We could probably work a deal with them. There's another few left-handed free agents out there. Taylor Anderson or Rogers. I think Rogers is his name. Brad Hand are some other options. I don't think grabbing Carlos Rodon will be the smartest move. He's a little more expensive. But I think grabbing a left-handed younger guy, like you could pay minimum for about a year or two, is definitely the way to go to offload some of this money. So you give Judge the max contract that you're saying. They did say they have enough money to give Judge his money and bring another big name. So if they do try to make a jump in the shortstop market, I do see them getting rid of Gleyber Torres, sending him to Seattle. That would allow Peraza to play second base, and then either Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson to play shortstop. So yeah, my critique did sound like what the TV makes it seem all Yankees fans feel. The season was a failure. We didn't win the World Series. The players won the accomplishments, but we don't care about that. Honestly, we really don't. Hats off to Aaron Judge winning the MVP. Hats off to Trevino. But we won a World Series. Been too many years. We have the team. Just grab the left-handed pitchers. Make your lineup solid so everybody knows where they're playing. They know the mindset to come in every day, and you won't have a problem with guys fucking up later in the year, being uncomfortable or not really being true to themselves. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this season. Hopefully next year we do walk away with that 28th World Series. We do need to bring up some of those young guys and play them every day. We need pitching. Management, figure your shit out. Pay Judge. Make him the first position player to make $40 million a year.